So welcome to part one of the Rose Cardigan Crochet Along. I'm so excited to have you here with me, and I know you're excited to get started on your cardigans. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how to crochet the back panel, as well as sharing the pattern repeat you need to complete this stage of the pattern. If you're just joining me and joining this channel, hi and welcome. My name is Fiona and I am the designer behind Cozy Rosie Crochet. Now before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you can know when the next part of the Rose Cardigan Crochet Along is released. Hopefully by now you've already worked up your gauge swatch and confirmed that you're going to meet gauge for this pattern. If you haven't already completed your gauge swatch, you'll find a link in the top right hand corner to take you over to that section before you start your cardigan. However, if you are taking a risk and just jumping straight in, don't worry, I'm here for it. I'm going to be sharing with you the measurements you're going to be needing to achieve with your back panel, both the width and the length, to ensure an excellent fit. Now, one of the skills I want to be sharing as part of this crochet along is how the written pattern looks, so that you understand, so that you can go on and move on to other garment patterns to really create your own handmade wardrobe. I do want to let you know that if you find that there's a part of the pattern that's a bit not clear or you're not quite getting it, feel free to comment below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. You can also find a link in the description box below for the written pattern, which is visible over on the website, and it will be forever free on there for you too. And of course you can come and join us in the Cozy Rosie Crochet community, which is a Facebook group where everyone's going to be stitching up their cardigans together. Right, let's check out these materials we need to make our cardigan. Now I have already gone in detail as to how much yarn you're going to be needing, but I don't know if I've shared with you yet the actual yarn that I'm going to be using. So for this sample, I'm going to be using Lion Brand's Respect, and this is a recycled polyester blend. It uses 45% recycled polyester, 30% acrylic and 25% cotton. So it is not the softest it could be, but I'm hoping it's going to really wash up well when I give it a block, and I'm going to show you how to increase the softness of your yarn if you need to. I'm going to be using a 5mm crochet hook, which is what I achieved gauge with this DK size 3 light yarn. This is kind of not what I would call a traditional double knit for those in the UK. It's a little bit heavier than our standard double knits, and I achieved gauge quite easily with my 5mm hook. You can use an Aran, a worsted, size 4, whichever you need. If you want some more help with selecting your yarns, if you're now a bit concerned, like, oh my goodness, she's using a size 3, the pattern's written for a size 4, please go and check out my video about substituting yarn. Again, I'll link this in the top right hand corner for you, just so you can start your project with confidence. However, you can just jump in and make the first kind of section of the pattern, because that's when I'm going to tell you to check your measurements. So you've got your yarn, your hook, whichever hook was recommended. Mine is a 5mm, and then I'm going to encourage you to grab your measuring tape once again, because we should have measured ourselves. If you're not sure what size you should be making, there is another video which takes you through how to measure yourself to check which size you want to be making. I'm going to pop on the screen here the schematic, which is what I discussed in depth in my last video, which will give you the panel width per size and also which length you want to make. Now obviously if you're making a longer length, you're going to potentially need more yarn, so do bear that in mind. I am going to be making an extra large, and the length that I have chosen to make is a mid-thigh length. So I'm using quite a lot. I've got 9 balls altogether, and I don't think I'm going to need quite that much, but I just like to get an extra one just in case. So once you've got all of your materials, let's jump in and start this pattern. So as you can see on the screen here, each size is going to start with a different length of chain. The chains are written in size order. So for instance, an extra small needs to chain a 49 and the 5XL needs to chain a 97. And in between that, each of the individual sizes are listed. So for instance, if you're making an extra large like me, we can count across from the start to work out where our sizes are going to be listed. So chain 49 is an extra small, chain 55 is a small, chain 61 would be a medium, chain 67 would be a large. I'm making an extra large, which is a chain of 73, and the sizes continue up from there. So a 2XL would be a chain of 79, 3XL would be 85, 4XL 91, and that 5XL is 97. So we are going to start by making a slip knot by bringing that working yarn through a loop, and we can place the loop onto our crochet hook. Just going to tighten that so it's right up to my hook, making sure that I'm using the biggest part of my hook. So I need to make a chain of 67. So to make our chain, we simply bring the yarn over the hook, tilt the hook to the floor and bring it through the loop on our hook. So that was 1, and we're going to repeat that until we have the right number of chains. So 3. So go ahead and make your chain for the size that you need to be making. I'm making the extra large, so I'm doing a chain of 73. 72 and 73. So I have my chain here all the way down, and from here we're going to continue in row 1 by working our first stitch. Now our stitch that we're using in the main element of our panel is the extended half double crochet. So if you're familiar with the half double crochet stitch, it uses that stitch with 1 extra step. Now this loop on our hook does not count as a stitch, and there is our first chain, and we're going to be working into that second chain from hook. So we've got 1 and 2. I'm going to cover up the next one so I know where I'm inserting my hook. We're going to yarn over the hook and insert our hook into that second chain from hook. Going to yarn over, bring our loop back through. Instead of normally we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3, there's 1 extra step to make it an extended half double crochet. So for here, we're going to yarn over the hook, bring it through just the first loop on our hook. So we still have 3 loops on, and you can see you've got 1 completed loop already. And this time we yarn over and pull through the remaining 3 loops. And that's an extended half double crochet. We're going to continue to work 1 extended half double crochet into each chain across. So we'll do a few more with you. So we yarn over the hook, ignore that nice big hole. We're going into that next chain. We're going to yarn over to bring our 3rd loop up. I'm going to make that look a bit neater for you. Going to yarn over and just pull through that first loop on our hook. So we still have 3 loops. We yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And we're going to repeat this all the way down. Ignore that big hole. We're going into that next chain, working another extended half double crochet. So once you have those 3 loops on your hook, just yarn over and pull through that first loop only, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Once again, we yarn over, insert our hook into the next chain, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through that first loop on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now we're going to continue to repeat this all the way down for row 1 until we reach back to where our slip knot is, and I'm going to meet you at the end of row 1 to check our stitch counts. So continue to work 1 extended half double crochet all the way down, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1. So at the end of row 1, we're going to check our stitch counts because it's really important that the foundation of our project has the right stitch count before we move on. On the screen here, you can see the sizes and the stitch counts per size. So extra small should have a stitch count of 48, 54, 60, 66, 72, 78, 84, 90 and 96. And they should all be extended half double crochets. Now it's probably really tempting. You can just see my tape measure here just off camera because it's really tempting to measure this and think that's going to be the finished size. But strangely, it won't be, because as you continue to work, your project will increase in size. What is really important is that your piece is flat. So you haven't got it giving you a frown or you haven't got it smiling at you. If your first row is smiling or frowning, it means that your starting chain was either too tight or too loose. So for instance, if you have a frown and it's kind of curving in at the sides, it means that your starting chain was a bit too tight and you might want to go up 0.5 millimeter or 1 hook size to do your starting chain again. If your first row is smiling at you, it means that your starting chain was a little bit too loose, which is uncommon, but it does happen. So make sure that when you lay your piece of crochet flat, You might have a slight curl, don't worry about that too much because we can fix that later. Anything more than that, if it's completely rolling up, I would recommend doing this row again until you've got it laying flat. It's not smiling, it's not frowning, because then you have the perfect first row to continue in your crochet garment. So as long as your stitch count is correct, we can continue into rows 2 to 6. Rows 2 to 6 is a chain 1, EHDC in same and each across. This is a nice easy row to decipher. Very simply, we are going to make a chain of 1, and you can see in brackets there it says does not count. That's because that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So it's not the equivalent of an extended half double crochet. So let's make our turning chain of 1 and turn our work ready to continue with row 2. So we're going to yarn over the hook and we're working into the same stitch as our chain 1 because that chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So you can see there's my chain 1, here's my first stitch, and this is where we're going to be inserting our hook. So we're going to yarn over the hook and insert underneath both loops of our stitch, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over, pull through just that first loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And we're going to continue to repeat this all the way across for row 2, which is why it says EHDC in same, so extended half double crochet in the same as the chain 1, and then EHDC in each across, and that means each stitch across. So continue to work your extended half double crochets for a total of 6 rows. So we're working row 2 and we're going to do rows 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, all the exact same as row 2. So continue to repeat row 2 until you have a total of 6 rows. So this is row 1, this is row 2, and I'll meet you in a moment once you have done your first 6 rows, working 1 extended half double crochet into each stitch across, remembering that each row starts with a turning chain of 1 that does not count as a stitch. Now your stitch count should remain the same after each row, and it's at that point we're going to be able to measure and see the width of our project. So I will meet you at the end of row 6. So once you've completed your first 6 rows, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, this is a really good time to double check the width of your project. Now mine doesn't quite fit on screen. So I'm making an extra large, and I'm going to pop the schematic back on here for you, just so you can double check your sizing. So the width for your extra small is 16, small's 18, medium is 20, large is 22, extra large is 24, 2XL is 26, 3XL is 28, 4XL is 30, and 5XL should be 32 inches across. So I'm going to grab my tape measure and just literally place it at the edge. Oh, a bit awkward to do this. Hang on, let me bring that over. Start at the edge. I'm about an inch short. Oh no, maybe not. It's just making sure that you've got the space in your pattern there, because it's quite easy. I mean, I am going to stretch mine a bit because I'm going to block this project at the end. So with a good stretch, we're just about at 24. You can see that on the screen. And that's important that we've reached the right size now before we go any further. I'm going to go into row 7. Get some more yarn up. So you should now have your 6 rows of extended half double crochet, and we're going to chain 1 to turn. Again, this chain 1 does not count, and we're changing our stitch because we're going to start the little lacy section in between these panels of 6 rows. So we're going to be working half double crochets, and we're going to be working a half double crochet V-stitch, or the equivalent of. So we're going to yarn over and half double crochet in the same stitch as your chain 1. So once again, where your chain 1's coming out of, we're just going to insert our hook underneath both loops of our stitch, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now our pattern repeat for this row starts here. So we're going to skip the next stitch and into the next stitch along. So we skip the next, and then if I show you the written pattern here, you can see we have an abbreviation within brackets. Now those abbreviations within a bracket should be repeated into the same stitch. So we're going to skip the next, and then into the next stitch we're going to yarn over and work 1 half double crochet. We're going to chain 1, and then working back into the same stitch again, we yarn over to work a further half double crochet. So that pattern repeat is we skip the next, and then into the next stitch we work 1 half double crochet. So we yarn over, insert, bring our loop up, yarn over and pull through 3. We then chain 1, and then we work a further half double crochet by yarning over and inserting into the same stitch to bring our third loop up, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Now this is going to create a really cute lacy element to this cardigan and break up these blocks of the extended half double crochets. So we're going to repeat this, skipping 1 stitch and then working 1 half double crochet, a chain 1 and a further half double crochet into the same stitch. I'm going to repeat that all the way along to this last stitch here. So not the second from last, the last. So keep repeating that all the way across, and I shall meet you at the end of row 7. So it's just 1 half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet, remembering to skip that stitch in between. So we skip and then work 1 half double crochet, a chain 1 and a further half double crochet into the same stitch. It should be looking a little bit something like that. So keep repeating that all the way across, and I'll meet you at the end of row 7. So I'm meeting you back here. I still have 3 stitches remaining, and I'm just going to, in case you're worried about where you're working these last few stitches. So we're going to skip that next stitch. Into the next one, we work our half double crochet, chain 1 and another half double crochet, and then all that's left to do in that last stitch is to work a final half double crochet. So at the end of row 7 you should have the following stitch counts. Remember, these are given in size order, so have a look through, do a double check. For me, I'm going to admit I'm just going to count my chain 1 spaces, so I've put those on there for you as well. So I should have 35 chain 1 spaces, which are these spaces in between, and then I know I've got my half double crochets either side, and that should give me my correct stitch count. So providing your stitch count is correct, we're going to go straight into row 8, and we're starting with a turning chain of 1. And for row 8, we're going to be working back into these chain 1 spaces all the way across. We've done our turning chain of 1, so we're going to start by yarning over and working a half double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 1. Before we work the half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet into the chain 1 space. If you're not familiar with what you're looking at in front of you, you've just worked your stitch here. This is a half double crochet. You did a chain 1 and another half double crochet. And we're going in between these 2 stitches here, and that's the chain 1 space in between. Once again, as you can see on the pattern here, the stitches are written in between brackets, so it's got to be worked into the same stitch or space. In this case, we're going to be working these stitches into our chain 1 spaces. So we yarn over and insert into that chain 1 space between those 2 half double crochets. We're working 1 half double crochet, a chain 1 and a following half double crochet into the same chain 1 space. Now it's important that we don't work into this space here, because that's actually a stitch. This is the stitch of the top of our half double crochet from the previous row. So we're going to ignore this space here. We're looking for in between the posts of our stitches. You can see here you've got 2 stitches coming out of that 1 stitch, and it's in between there that we're working, right there. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook into that next chain 1 space, work a half double crochet, a chain 1, followed by another half double crochet, all into that same chain 1 space. You just cheat and bring that back up. Now we're going to repeat this all the way across, ignoring that stitch because that is part of a stitch. We're going to work into the chain 1 spaces all the way across. So continue to repeat that all the way down to your last chain 1 space, and I'll meet you here to go through the final stitch. I'm just working my final half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet. We have this final stitch that we need to skip, and then we're going to work 1 half double crochet into that final stitch of row 8. So we now have this really cute lacy section in amongst our rows of extended half double crochets. Your stitch count will remain the same in row 8 as it was for row 7, and we're going to go straight into row 9 because this takes us back to our extended half double crochets. We start by making a turning chain of 1, and if we have a look at the written pattern here, you can see that it's saying to chain 1, extended half double crochet in the same stitch as our chain 1, just like we've been doing, and then it's saying to skip the next extended half double crochet in the chain 1 space into the extended half double crochet. So let's have a look at what that actually means. So we've got our chain 1 here, there's our first stitch. So we're going to work our extended half double crochet again. So just going back into that stitch where the chain 1 is coming out of, yarn over, bring our loop up. Got those 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through that first loop only before we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So it's telling us to skip the next stitch and place 1 extended half double crochet into the chain 1 space. So we yarn over, insert into the chain 1 space in between those 2 half double crochets, yarn over, bring a loop up, just pull through that first loop, yarn over and pull through the remaining 3 loops. And we then work 1 extended half double crochet into the next. So we skipped this stitch in our previous row, but in this row we're going to place another extended half double crochet. So you've just worked into the chain 1 space. Here's our next stitch. There's our next chain 1 space. So we're going to work into that stitch in between our chain 1 spaces effectively. So we yarn over, insert our hook, bring our loop up, yarn over, pull through that first loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So the pattern repeat for here is we skip the next, working 1 extended half double crochet into the chain 1 space. We then work 1 extended half double crochet into the next stitch. This is what you can see here is actually your chain 1, and we've worked into that chain 1 space. So we're going to yarn over and work into this next stitch in between these posts here. So we yarn over and insert, bring our loop up, just pull through that first loop before we pull through all 3 loops. So continue to repeat that the whole way down till you reach your last chain 1 space, and I'm going to meet you here because we're going to do something a little bit different. Although it's not different, I just want to make sure you get it spot on. So continue to repeat that all the way down. We're going to skip the next stitch, working our extended half double crochet into our chain 1 space. We then work into that next stitch by working a further extended half double crochet. So repeat that all the way down, and I will meet you ready for those last few stitches of row 9. So I've just worked my last extended double crochet into that last chain 1 space, and you should still have 2 stitches remaining. So we're going to work an extended half double crochet into the next stitch, and this is the really important one, and it's easy to miss this last stitch because it can get confusing with your turning chain. So there is 1 more stitch to work into, and we need to place another extended half double crochet into that final stitch. So at the end of round 9, you should be back to your original stitch count that we had at the end of row 1 to 6. And as you can see, if I hold it at that angle, you can see that we're going to add on another block of our extended half double crochets. So I've now shown you every single stitch that we're going to be using and the full pattern repeat for the back panel of our piece. So now we just need to work out how many repeats we need to do depending on what size you are making. So depending on which length you're going to be making will depend on the number of repeats you need to do to reach the length of your back panel. We've already checked the width, and that should be matching what the schematic tells us. Remember, if you need to double check, you can go and have a look on the website. It's all linked in the description box for you. So all the sizes are going to follow the same repeat pattern. We're going to be repeating rows 2 to row 9 for a certain number of times, depending on what length you're going to be making. So for instance, if you're making the crop length of 14 inches, you're going to be repeating rows 2 to 9 2 more times for a total of 25 rows. So you're going to work row 2 to 6, which is just 1 extended half double crochet into each row across, followed by the rows 7 and 8 with that beautiful little V-stitch in there, followed by that final row we've just worked. And you're going to do that 2 more times in total. If you're making the hip length, which is 22 inches, you're going to be working 4 repeats of rows 6 to 9 to give you a total row count of 41. For the mid-thigh length, which is about 30 inches, you're going to be repeating rows 2 to 9 6 more times for a total row count of 57. And then the knee length, you're going to be repeating row 2 to 9 7 more times for a total row count of 65. Of course, you can go and re-watch all of these rows again so that you're happy with them. Just make a note of how many repeats you do. And then once you've done that repeat and you've reached either row 25, 41, 47, 57 or 65, I'm going to meet you back here because there's one final repeat we need to do. So go ahead and make those repeats. I'll meet you back in a little while once you've done them to give you the final section of the back panel. So I've made the majority of my back panel and I'm just checking my length, and it's not going to be quite to the full length yet because I have a few more rows to make, and so do you. So don't worry if you haven't quite reached that total length yet. We have a few more rows to go. So once you have reached your final repeat, I've actually gone ahead and worked the last few rows because I have no memory of what I'm doing. So apologies about that. I'm going to show you instead. So once you've reached those final rows, so you should be either on row 26, row 42, 58 or 66, depending on which row you've done. This is my row 57 all the way up here, straight after that stitch. So let's pretend I don't have that on there. What we're going to do, as you can quite obviously see, is we're going to add on one final repeat or one block of our extended half double crochets so that our lace pattern is within our pattern. So if I turn it on this side, you should start with a nice block of extended half double crochets and we'll end with a block of half double crochets as well. So those final 5 rows are just going to be one extended half double crochet into each stitch across, remembering your turning chain of 1, and that completes your back panel. Once you've worked those final rows, you should be at the correct length for your back panel. Now, obviously, if you find that you want to make yours a bit longer or you think it's too long for you, you can of course adjust that length. That is entirely up to you. I'm not here to dictate what length your cardigan should be. Mine is so let me just measure mine again. I am a little bit short. I've lost an inch somewhere. Now I'm not overly worried about being 1 inch too short because I'm more than 1 inch short than the average person. So my length's going to be pretty much spot on. Instead, I'm going to leave mine as it is. So if you do want to add some extra length on, you can just add on rows 7 and 8 from where you are, and then add on another row 2 to 6 repeat of just the extended half double crochets, and that will add on about 4 inches very easily. Once you have finished your back panel, that is of course the end of this section of the pattern. Now there is no need to rush this. I don't want you to think you have to have it done by tomorrow. The next part of the pattern, let me just turn that so it looks nice and pretty. The next part of the pattern is going to be for the side panels. Now we're going to have 2 separate side panels coming in, because there's going to be a nice V-neck shape. It's going to be actually more like a sweetheart neckline, and they're going to be different because the decreases need to be worked on different sides of the pattern. So the next part of the pattern to be released, which will be coming out on the following Friday, will be for the left side panel, and then the week after will be your right side panel. So there really is no need to rush. This pattern is going to be released over a number of weeks to keep you going without worrying about being too quick about it. I hope you are finding these stitches beautiful, because I certainly love them. I love the ripple effect of the extended half double crochets, and I'm hoping that you do too. So thank you for joining me for this part of the pattern. Do come on over to the community group so that we can share in your success in completing your back panel, and I will see you in the next video.